Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I am your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse, and the co-prophet of these end times. If there is one thing I've discovered as the co-prophet of these end times, is that the Holy Spirit does not reveal everything all at once. He lets the information out in bits and pieces, on a need-to-know basis, so to speak. And he has now given me a very good indication of who the false prophet is, as found in the book of Revelation. And I have gone through a lot of this information before, but I've never completely understood it. What John did in the book of Revelation, in order to identify the false prophet, is to give us several mathematical formulas and a puzzle to solve. And what we have here is a puzzle. It's a mathematical equation. And what we have to do is solve the identities of X and Y. And he gives us two different formulas. So let's take a look at these and see if we can find out who St. John is prophesying about to be the false prophet of these end times. Now, I have said many times before on this program, as I'm sure you know, that the four evil entities of the end times John divides up into 3+1 combinations. Now, those four evil entities are, of course, as you know, the Antichrist, the false prophet, the one-world communist tyranny, and Satan himself. And whenever John describes them, they have a combination of characteristics, but one is always different than the other three. And he describes them in four different categories. Which ones go to hell, which ones are called beasts, the combination of heads and horns which they have, and also the color red. But it's interesting, he only tells two with the color red. We have to determine which one has the color red, the identity of X, and which one does not have the color red, the identity of Y. So let's look at these 3+1 combinations. The three that go to hell are Satan, false prophet, and the Antichrist. And you can find that yourself in the book of Revelation, chapter 20, verse number 10. The one that does not go to hell, or so to speak, the odd man out, is the scarlet beast. And of course, since the scarlet beast is a corporate entity, in other words, the one world communist tyranny, it cannot be judged as an individual and sent to hell, the same way that Satan, the false prophet, and the Antichrist are judged. Evil governments are judged in this world, and the scarlet beast will be judged by Jesus himself at the Battle of Armageddon. And all of his followers will be cast into hell, but the scarlet beast itself, of course, cannot be judged in that same way. So now let's look at a different category. Which of these four evil entities are beasts? Well, we know the false prophet is the beast from the earth. The Antichrist is the beast from the sea. And of course, the scarlet beast is a beast. We know that from his name. Satan, however, is not a beast. John describes him as a dragon. So now let's look at the heads and horns combination. The Antichrist has 7 heads and 10 horns. So does the scarlet beast. And so does Satan. Now, they are not all the same 7 heads and 10 horns, but nonetheless, that is their characteristic. The false prophet, however, in this case, is the odd man out because the false prophet only has 2 horns. So now we are ready for the mystery of which of these evil entities is associated with the color red. We know the scarlet beast is because the name scarlet is right in his title. Satan is associated with the color red because he is the red dragon. So we know from the 3+1 combinations that there must be one more associated with the color red and one that is the odd man out. That's the first formula. But there is one other formula that John has set up here. And that is that the odd man out is always different in these 4 different descriptions. We've already had the scarlet beast. That's the odd man out as far as which one goes to hell. We've already had Satan. That's the odd man out Satan is not described as a beast. We've already had the false prophet because he only has 2 horns. Consequently, we can now solve the equation for the identity of Y. The odd man out must be the Antichrist, because we have not used the Antichrist up here as the odd man out. Consequently, we can now identify the value of X. The value of X, the unknown one, the one who is not described as having red, because of this mathematical formula, must be the false prophet. We have now solved the mathematical equation which John set up in the book of Revelation. Why is this significant? And why is it significant at this time? Well, the false prophet must be a religious leader. The Antichrist is a secular leader, but the term false prophet tells us that this must be a dominant world figure in the world of religion. Now, the only religious leaders that I can think of, prominent ones, who are associated with the color red are cardinals in the Roman Catholic Church. I think John is making it very clear that Mr. X, the false prophet, is a cardinal. Now, what does that do with my prophecy that Pope Francis is the false prophet? Well, I think it means that Pope Francis was not elected legitimately. He is an interloper. Our real pope at this time is actually Pope Benedict. And I have said that many times on this program. And this is verified by Daniel in his chapter 10, verse number 3, where he describes the Eucharist being taken away from the prince, which is the abomination of desolation, which Jesus warned about in the Olivet Discourse. Daniel says, I ate no desirable bread. That's the Eucharist. Neither flesh nor wine entered into my mouth. That is the Eucharist. Neither was I anointed with oil. That is a description of the false prophet. In other words, the false prophet is not legitimate. He is not truly anointed. And I believe Cardinal Bergoglio is not a true pope. And that is what we are finding out in the book of Revelation. And we are finding it out now because we did not really need to know until now. Now the Holy Spirit is warning us at the time of this Synod of Bishops in Rome what we must beware of. Because when they take the daily sacrifice away from the prince, in other words, when they desecrate the Eucharist, when they say the Eucharist should be given to people living in mortal sin, Jesus will not enter into those consecrations. Those consecrations will be invalid. And that is when Jesus tells us we must leave the green field. We must flee. We must not go back to take our cloaks. And if you would like to know more information about my ministry here on YouTube, visit my thirdeaglemedia.com website.